All right, so strap in, everybody. Get ready for today's deep dive. This one's going to be, I think, a fascinating one. We're going to try to understand how people saw Melania Trump. But get this, we're going to do it through song titles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty wild, right? So we found this list online. It's called, get this, Top 10 Song Titles That Describe Melania Trump. And it's all over the place, musically speaking. I mean, we've got Roy Orbison sharing space with Kanye West.
It's a pretty broad spectrum.
Yeah, no kidding. But here's the question. Can we really get a feel for how people viewed Melania just from looking at these song titles? What can we actually learn here?
I think it's definitely an interesting way to approach this because, think about it, song titles, they often become like this cultural shorthand.
Yeah, they totally do.
Like they pack these complex ideas and emotions into just a few words.
It's true. You hear a song title and boom, it evokes all these feelings and associations.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see how this list uses those shortcuts, those song titles, to try to portray Melania, as a person, as a public figure.
Okay, so let's dive right into the list. Some of these titles, well, they kind of jumped out at me right away. Like right off the bat, you've got, Oh, Pretty Woman. Well, that one puts the spotlight pretty squarely, on Melania's appearance.
Right, front and center.
Yeah. And then there's Broken English, which, well, that references her background, right?
Mm.
As someone who's not a native English speaker.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget dedicated follower of fashion. I mean, her style choices, they were constantly making headlines.
It's true. Fashion was definitely a big part of her public image.
It really was.
Mm.
So what do you make of these first few? Do you think they're just kind of surface level observations, or could there be something, deeper going on there?
Well, I think they definitely start by focusing on those more, obvious aspects.
Sure, the things that people immediately noticed.
Exactly. Her appearance, her language. But they also, they kind of hint at the potential for these deeper interpretations. You know what I mean?
Oh, I like that.
Like take Oh, Pretty Woman, for example. Is it just like a simple acknowledgement of her beauty? Or, is there maybe like an element of objectification there?
Oh, interesting.
Like reducing her to just her looks.
Yeah,
And that's, I think, where things start to get really interesting.
that's a great point. It all comes down to, like, how you choose to interpret it, right?
Yeah.
But then we get to Me and the Devil, and whoa, that one throws a curveball into the whole mix. I mean, talk about a shift in tone.
Me and the Devil definitely brings in like a darker, more mysterious element to the whole thing.
It really does. And again, it makes you wonder, is this about Melania herself? Or is it more about, her connection to Donald Trump, all the controversies that surrounded his presidency?
Right, because it's all tied together, isn't it?
Totally. And it's important to remember, we have no idea who created this list or what their, intentions were.
Absolutely. That context is missing.
Yeah. So we're left to sort of, speculate and interpret on our own.
Which I think makes it even more intriguing to try and unpack.
I agree. And speaking of unpacking this list, it also has a contenders section, which is basically like, the songs that almost made the top 10.
The honorable mentions.
Exactly. And that's where we see some really, like, stark contrasts in how people perceived her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got Beautiful up against Ugly Girl. I mean, talk about polarizing, right?
Yeah, that is quite the contrast.
And then they throw Gold Digger into the mix, which, well, that taps into that whole narrative about wealth and marriage, right?
Yeah.
Especially in these high-profile relationships.
It's a classic trope, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, I mean, these contrasting titles, what do they tell us about how public figures, especially those close to power, are often viewed by the public?
I think they really highlight how different people can see the same person through these, like, totally different lenses,
Like they're looking at the same thing but seeing something completely different.
Exactly. And a lot of it comes down to, people projecting their own assumptions and biases, their own political beliefs onto that person.
Yeah, it's like they become these blank canvases that other people use to paint their own narratives.
That's a great way to put it. A blank canvas onto which people project their own interpretations.
And then it's interesting, too, how some of these titles, they seem to be more about Donald Trump than about Melania herself.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, FDT, come on, that's a pretty clear example, right?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that, like, you can't really separate Melania's public image from her husband.
They're a package deal in the public eye.
Yeah, they're inextricably linked, I guess, in the public consciousness.
Totally. And so any attempt to understand how she was perceived, you have to take that into account, right?
Yeah.
That connection to Donald Trump.
You can't ignore that context.
Okay, so big picture time. Yeah. After looking at all this, what do you think? I mean, do you think this list, even though it's just, song titles, does it actually give us some real insight into how people saw Melania Trump?
I think it does, yeah. I mean, it's definitely just a snapshot, right? But it gives us a glimpse into this like multifaceted and sometimes really contradictory view of Melania Trump during her time in the White House.
It's a puzzle with a lot of different pieces.
Exactly. And I think it shows how music can actually act as like a mirror to society, you know?
Oh, that's cool. Like, it reflects back our collective opinions and biases.
Exactly. So in these song choices, we see these themes of beauty and wealth, power, and even, the challenges of being a non-native English speaker navigating this very public role.
That's so true. It's a fascinating lens to look through.
It really is. And it's a reminder that even something as simple as a song title can say a lot about our cultural values and perceptions.
All right, so before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with something to think about. If you had to pick just one song title, and only one, to capture Melania Trump's public image, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a tough one. But it's a great way to sort of synthesize everything we've talked about today, right?
Well, definitely. It forces you to distill it all down to its essence.
Yeah. So take some time, give it some thought, and until next time, keep diving deep.
Happy diving.